We're live.
Oh, are we on? Hey. Yes?
Yes, we're on. We're live.
Welcome to IncrediChat, our wonderful IncrediWeek show, as I do my fun hand gestures that I do all the time. Tonight, Ozzy and I are with our good buddy and writer extraordinaire. You guys know him from this wonderful series that Archie put out there. It's signed by Fernando, who's a great artist, too, who hopefully will get on here. But our good buddy and friend, and I know he signed this for me. You know, he's going to talk a little bit about some of the great things he's worked on. But our good buddy, Paul Castigila, he's with us tonight here.
And let's bring him on. And we will switch screens like that so it's easier for all of us to see.
See, Paul,
hey
you signed this for me back at New York Comic-Con many years ago. Not many years ago. It sounds like makes it sound old. It was a few years ago when you signed it, not many years ago.
Well, that collection came out in 2011, so so we, it has to be within the last 9 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or did I just do the math wrong?
It was when we did Kids Comic-Con at New York Comic-Con.
Okay, all right, one of those.
Indeed.
So, Paul, for anyone who doesn't know who's watching, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, some of the stuff you've worked on?
Sure. I've been kicking around comics since 1989. Worked for a variety of publishers. Wrote some stuff for DC, Looney Tunes Magazine and Showcase. Did a handful of Tex Avery character stories for Dark Horse, Crack Magazine, Antarctic Press, War of the Independence, which has all kinds of indie characters in it. But most of my work has been with Archie. I was a writer and editor at Archie for many years, and also a company historian. I was on staff there for about 10 years or so, and then went freelance after that. So a lot of my work has been with Archie. Additionally to that, I've done some animation writing, some Thomas the Train shorts for Mattel, and I've done some film history work, different projects I'm working on, books and live appearances at film festivals and whatnot. So, and I see Mike holding up some archive collections there. Yeah, when I was at Archie, I did a lot of those archive books.
Did you do the Josie one too, or no? Was that you?
What's that?
Are you on the Josie one too? Because I have that one.
Yeah, I worked on the Josie one. I worked on a bunch of those, mostly the Archie Americana series. But yeah, my job on those was to research the old stories, find out when first appearances happened, and other kind of ephemera, like the first instance of the love triangle with Archie, Benny, and Veronica, and things like that. And those were great fun. And the way I was able to do that was that Archie actually has a very extensive collection of their back issues, and they have them in what's called bound volumes. So they would take like a year's worth of issues, which could be, if it was monthly, 12 issues, right? So a 1946 run of Archie would be collected under two hardback covers. There was a binder they used in New Jersey. I think it was called Ocker and Trap, if I remember correctly. And they used to put these bound volumes together. So they had this library of almost everything that they had published. Not everything, but pretty darn close. And those were what I utilized to do research for those special archive editions.
So can I ask you a question about these archive editions?
Sure.
So, I mean, like, obviously here we have the best of Josie. I love Josie and the Pussycats. And I just watched the movie again today because I think it's a fun movie. But, I've always loved Josie and the Pussycats from the Hanna-Barbera cartoon, the iterations on Archie. So this is the best of Josie and the Pussycats. And, I mean, Josie as a character, I mean, we know that Dan DeCarlo based the character off of his wife. And I actually have the second. I'll look in the archives. I think I have the first or the second issue of just Josie. But in the archive, in the book that you put together, this is from She's Josie #1, right? So, I mean, obviously between She's Josie and then all the iterations, this book came out in 2001. All the iterations of Josie. And this book's probably like 100 pages roughly. How do you pick the best of Josie and the Pussycats from like 60 years worth of Josie and the Pussycats, and the same thing for Archie too?
Well, that book had a at that point I was freelancing, so I wasn't even in the office on staff at that time. So I did that book as a freelance gig. So I would come in when I had spare time to do it. There were times when I only had to work half days for my day job, so I would go in on the other half of the Friday, the half day Fridays, and go in and just look through stuff. And because that book was timed to accompany the release of the movie you mentioned,
Gotcha.
basically the focus was, hey, pull as many really good band stories as possible.
Because that's the thing. Like, I mean,
that was pretty much the direction that I got, and I was responsible for making sure some of the back history stuff before the music got in there, just because I thought, you got to have the back history too.
Well, because I mean, even like with Josie and with Josie and with Archie, I mean, these books came out in the 2000s, so clearly there are like a decade's worth of stories. Did you actually go through? And we'll use Josie as an example here. Did you go through and, because surely you haven't read them all prior to that, did you go and reread every issue of Josie and be like, wow, this is good?
I mean, it would be more like going through the materials. For that book had a tight deadline, so some of the material was repurposed from an actual 48-page Josie special that I had edited back in the 90s. I think it was around 1993, 1994. And they were just really well-received stories. So those got the first pick, and we knew we could easily grab the reproduction materials on those because we had already published it. So in that case, it's kind of a little bit of a different case than some of the other books.
Like the
Each book had its own parameters and pros and cons in terms of the behind the scenes, how you can put it together. And sometimes it was a matter of what was the available material.
Yeah, because that's
like the rest of the 1940s, Volume 2 exists primarily because I found these old black and white proofs of a bunch of Laugh issues from the 40s. It just randomly add those, and it was so hard to do the reproductions on 1940 stuff because at the time, originally you had to do what was called the Greg Theakston bleaching process, which anybody listening could kind of look that up if they want. But it was a pretty labor intensive. We're talking pre-computers, actually literally bleaching color out of pages and restatting them. And then we switched to the computer format. But again, it was a time when it wasn't as easy to do. People were still learning all this, how to do it, from the technical end. So it was more time intensive than it would be now. So if we had materials, that would also be a way to go. And now there were actually a lot of original pages, believe it or not, from the 60s and 70s and 80s. There were some from the 1950s as well. As hard as that may seem to believe, there were whole envelopes of complete books.
Gotcha.
On the large size paper that was put on, penciled and inked and lettered. And so in those cases too, when I was putting Americana books together, if we had that, we would use that. Now, if it was a story I just loved and thought had to be in there, and we had no other way to do it, then I would go to, I would say, look, we need to cut up a comic book and have it done either bleached, depending on the timing, or computerized, depending on what year it was that we were doing the work.
Yeah, no, because that's what I'm just like thinking about. Because and I have here the one of the volumes of the best of the '90s, and like for me, the '90s is when I really discovered Archie and the gang. And so certainly, like in this book in particular, you have a couple of the parodies that they did from Laugh, which were like Ratman and stuff like that. But like, and I because I liked Laugh as a book, but I mean, there are so many Archie stories in here. That's why I'm just like, how do you pick from a whole decade?
Oh yeah. Well, another parameter.
Some of these I didn't even see before. That's why.
Another parameter that we used for the Americana books was also because they were designed to be snapshots of decades, right?
Okay.
So parameters would be, do the stories reflect something important in the Archie mythos. Like, is there a really good love triangle story? Is there a really good Archie at odds with Mr. Lodge or Mr. Weatherby story?
Yeah.
Is there stuff like that? We do that, but then we would also do, what was the era about? Like if it was the 70s, is there a pet rock story, or a disco story, and 90s, is there a grunge story? So some stories got in just because they reflected the decade that they were in. So it would be a little bit maybe of a misnomer to say the best of, because it may not necessarily be better than some other stories, but it's giving you the flavor of the era.
Gotcha. Now let me ask you one other quick Archie. Since we're on this Archie kick, let me just ask you this quick question too, because I know this, and you and I have talked about this several times. Because my kids at school, and their love for Archie, they know this the most. And this is what came first. And if you can maybe tell us a little bit about the story of how this happened, which came first, the chicken or the egg? We have this, which you wrote, and then there's also this, which is like what all the kids knew. So. What's the story behind Weird Mysteries? Because you wrote
the story of Archie's Weird Mysteries is that I was still working on staff when the show was being developed by Deke, and whenever these things would happen, where shows or movies would go into development, as the company historian, I would have to get involved. So when Melissa Joan Hart and her mother Paula wanted to do Sabrina, they came to the office.
Oh wow!
And I had to give them exemplary stories of Sabrina that helped them develop the show. Same thing with Michael Houston. At one point had something going on for The Fly with Robert Zemeckis, and the same thing. So I had to go in there and be the point person, and knowing the history and knowing where to point them to say, hey, these are really good references for you to develop scripts, and even giving them my own thoughts on how they should go. So getting a little bit involved, at least in the tertiary level, in development. But yeah, so with Archie's Weird Mysteries, Deke was developing that show. And of course, I'm just a huge fan of mixing up humor and horror, scary stuff in general. I love Abbott Costello made Frankenstein. I'm writing a whole book called Scared Silly, which maybe we'll talk about in a little bit. Based on films like that. I loved Kolchak, The Night Stalker, which was a 1970s TV movie that became a TV series. And there was an 80s movie I liked a lot called Night of the Creeps, which to me was Archie and Jughead mixed up with kind of zombies and space aliens and things like that. And it was kind of a fun romp. So when we started helping Geek with reference for this, it just was gnawing at me. And I said to Victor Gorelick at the time, and I think to some other people there, Victor being the head editor, I said, there's got to be like a spin-off comic. If this show goes on the air, there needs to be a tie-in comic book to this, and I really want to write it. And then by the time all that happened, I had left the staff position. I'd gone to work elsewhere, and I said, look, I really want to write this. And I was still doing all kinds of other freelance work for them. I was working on the solicitation copy that appeared in all the Diamond catalogs for distribution, and I was writing press releases, and I was still doing the Americana type books. But I really wanted to write this series, and I had written a few other things in the 90s, like Little Archie and the Odd Archie story here or there, or Sonic or Turtles, but never like a regular series. But I really campaigned for this. And, I think Victor liked what I showed him, and he said, yeah, let's give it a shot. And so the show absolutely came first, and then the comic book itself took some cues from the show, but then kind of took on a life of its own. And
definitely towards the end of the run too, right?
What's that?
Towards the end of the run, it like kind of veered off into its own thing.
Well, that's a whole other story. But in the beginning, when it was still Weird Mysteries, as I started working on the stories, I realized I didn't want to necessarily make it, supernatural phenomenon of the week, or paranormal or whatever, or aliens every week. I wanted to sort of get into some things that would also play into the characters. So I was able to do some stories that played upon Archie being like girl crazy. Like there's a story where it's almost like a fembot type of story.
Mhm.
And there's a few other things like that where he's cloned or the girls are cloned. I forget which way it went, but things like that. So I tried to bring in some other things that weren't necessarily scary or spooky, just kind of weird and unusual. We did a whole story with Bigfoot, and
I remember
the point of that story wasn't even so much that he's a cryptozoological creature or he's scary or anything, as much as he was different and unique, and then everybody in the school wanted to be like him because he was so cool. And then Jughead has a great line in it. I mean, not to pat myself on the back, but I'm really, really proud of this particular story because Archie and the others, they all start growing their hair like Bigfoot because they want to be like him. And at one point, Jughead protests, and Archie was like, "Well, you're all about individuality. What's your issue with this? We're just trying to be individuals." And Jughead says, "Well, you can't be all individuals if you're all the same."
Yeah, here it is.
Yeah. So I was really proud of that issue, but I tried to kind of mix it up with Archie's Weird Mysteries. It was also a way for me to bring back some of those superheroes that they had.
Yeah, no, because ironically, as we're sitting here talking about this, it's funny too because in the back of the collection, it says obviously don't be me. The first question is which came first, the cartoon or the comic? We've just answered, but it says here which story was your favorite, and you said the two co-starring the Mighty Crusaders. So
we're going to get to in a few moments. I want to talk
real quick on how Archie's Weird Mysteries changed to Archie's Mysteries. Basically, the show was on a little network called PAX.
Yeah.
And it ran for like 4 months. And so the comic wasn't even out that long before the show was pulled off the air because it got pulled off the air quick. And so
was there a reason why it was pulled off the air or just ratings or?
I honestly don't know, but most of the run of the comic book, which was I think like 3.5 years, and 34 issues altogether if you include the non-weird issues, which is a pretty good run. I think for most of that time, the show was actually off the air for most of it. And so they just decided, I guess the sales of the comics kind of peaked and then they were starting to drop a little bit. And Victor said, look, we're gonna have to change to just regular mysteries. We're taking the weird out. And the show's not even on anymore. So it's just going to go from Archie's Weird Mysteries to Archie's Mysteries. And that's what happened. But then, as ironically as these things happen, as soon as the non-weird issues started coming out and hitting the stands in the comic shops, the Archie's Weird Mysteries cartoon show went into syndication and then never went off the air.
And that's where my kids
on the air.
Yeah.
It's been on continuously since then. So I always laugh about that. You never know how things are going to go and all that.
And tying up the whole Archie thing too. And I know it's somewhere in my collection, but I remember, and this is, I mean, obviously we've known each other for, I'd say close to 10 years now, you and I. But I remember seeing you, they were doing for a little while in when you got the direct edition comic books. Like there is a drawing of you, like they had Archie creators and there's a Paul Castigila one. I don't know what book it's on, but I'm sure you've seen that, because I know.
Yeah, they used to do Artist of the Month and Writer of the Month, and my mug got on there a couple of times.
Yeah,
that was in the early '90s, and at that point I was only doing some writing here and there, but they were nice enough to throw me on there, and Chris Allen, who had drawn most of the, not most of, but a good chunk of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and is a good friend of mine, and I knew him from college. We both went to school of visual arts. He was working on staff at the time and drew this great little caricature of me as if I was just like shot out of a cannon with sweat pouring off my face, and because I could be pretty hyper in those days. So I love that caricature.
Actually, speaking of the Ninja Turtles, you're a co-creator of something that kind of followed up with the Ninja Turtles, right? The Conservation Corps.
Yes. So that was an interesting thing. So I was working on staff at Archie, and I was a liaison with Mirage Studios. So basically, I was the point person once again. for them. They would pretty much create the art and send it in, and I got friendly with them, especially this guy Steve Murphy, who was handling everything on their side. And at one point, I submitted some story ideas to Steve, and he allowed them to be in a special, a nice, I think it was a 64 or 48 page special. It had a Jeff Smith cover and Dan Sakai artwork. So that was like the first time I wrote for something for Mirage, and so the relationship just kept getting better and better.
Mhm.
And so at a certain point, my buddy Dan Necrosis and I, we had created these characters that were environmental superheroes called Conservation Corps. We had pitched them to Archie. Archie wasn't sure. They had a lot of irons in the fire at the time, and they weren't sure if they were ready to commit to one more thing. But at the same time, the Turtles comics were getting more environmentally focused.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to Steve Murphy. I said, hey, like, we have these characters. Maybe we could do a story, team them up with the Turtles. And they loved the idea of Mirage. And so we did the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Meet the Conservation Corps, 64-page special. And then after that, Archie said, you know what? We'll give you guys a shot with a miniseries. And so we did 3 issues of that. And, it's fondly remembered. We had fans. The story I like to tell about it is that it came out during the whole collector craze. And so Dan and I think we were in a convention in Philadelphia, and I remember all the hot artists of the day were there, and they had lines of people waiting, and all the people in the lines had the comics bagged and boarded, and they were never going to read them. Like it hit me clear as day because kids kept coming up to Dan and I and telling us about our characters, and even things that like we had forgotten about or didn't think about. They were getting real in depth about it because they were really thinking about it. They had read the stories, and it hit me, like our fans are reading our stories, whereas super hot mega artists at the next table with the big line, those people are just getting like all 12 versions of the cover, variant covers signed, just so that they can get a signature and sell it later. But they're not really reading it and getting enrichment or entertainment value from it.
Yeah. All right, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Mike, you found something?
Oh no, I'm going through my Archie. I pulled out. I don't know if you saw. I pulled out. I have issues 2 and 3 of Conservation Course here. I know there's a little glare.
Yeah, somewhere I got the whole collection in there. I bought them originally when they came out. I remember that. I don't remember the year, but I remember buying them because I liked the cartoony Ninja Turtles comic that Archie put out back then.
Yeah.
And they did like
that's all Dan. That's all Dan Necrosis. He's great with all that cartoony style art, and he and I worked out the stories together and plotted them together, and then I would kind of fill in all the dialogue, and he would make tweaks. Had a good funny line, and he often did. And then he'd do the art, and occasionally, like I did color at least one story, believe it or not, and I drew a pinup in one of the issues. So I kind of utilized some of my.
Let me see if it's one of the issues I have.
But you are a graduate of SVA, I believe we talked about, right? So
So that's also a good story, and I like to tell this because I think it's encouraging. When I graduated from School of Visual Arts, I majored in animation, and I minored in cartooning and got my BFA. But I realized that I really didn't have all the chops I needed. I wasn't as proficient in perspective, anatomy, and composition as I thought I needed to be to compete with all these great people in my graduating class. So I was realistic about it, and so I stressed that to people. Be realistic about what it is you can do, and the thing you feel you can do best, focus in on that. Because it's okay to be the best inker or the best letterer or the best colorist. You don't necessarily have to be the best penciler or the best guy who can do all of it. And for me, it was writing. For me, I realized that I had the imagination and the creativity to come up with outlandish story ideas. and I also thought visually. I could draw well enough that I could put together picture scripts or storyboards.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what I ended up doing. I ended up concentrating on putting together a sample of picture scripts to try to get comic book work. And my first gig was writing for Looney Tunes magazine for DC.
Cool. Well, we got a few comments. First of all, our friend Emilio Velez Jr. says, hi, guys. So, hello, Emilio. Yes, long time no see. And we got Joe Ryan, one of our regular viewers and IncrediCon fan here. Hi, Joe. He says, hello, I have a question. I'm a graduate from the Kubert School and interested in working for Archie. What does Archie look like in a portfolio these days? Any feedback would be most appreciated. Now, are you able to answer something like that?
I don't know what they're looking for these days, but I would say if he's a graduate of the Kubert School,
yeah,
if he was fortunate enough to take Fernando Ruiz as a teacher for one or more of his classes, that's the person to go to. Fernando drew all the Archie's Weird Mysteries, and actually, Fernando too. It was very collaborative because Fernando always had good ideas too, and even wrote some stories for that. And so he knows everything about the business inside and out. Fernando is one of those guys who can do it all. He can write in pencil and ink and color and all of it. But I would say go to him because he would probably know more what they're looking for now than I would, because I really haven't been in that deep of the mix with Archie in recent times.
And the other comment that we got, I just want to give a shout out. I'm sorry if I screw up your name. It's Kamisha McKinney. It's a he, I'm assuming. Says what's up. So just hey, everyone's doing good here. So let's just move on quickly. We're staying in the Archie realm, but let's talk about this book, the MLJ Companion from Tomorrow's Publishing. You are one of the co-authors, and these here are Archie's superheroes, some of the ones that were in Archie's Weird Mystery. So you want to tell us how this came about and some of the characters? And
this was a book. I'm pretty sure that John Morrow wanted to do it, and he's the publisher.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure it started there, and then he went to Archie, but it could have been the other way around. It could have been Archie going to him.
Okay.
I'm always a little fuzzy on that. But the bottom line is that MLJ, Tomorrow's has been putting out these great books.
I got a bunch.
Fawcett Companion, right? Where you get to learn all about not just Captain Marvel, but Bullet Man and Ibis and all the rest. And then Spy Smasher, I think, was part of that group. And then Quality, which, my favorite publisher in the 1940s was Quality. Plastic Man, The Spirit, Black Hawk, Doll Man. So they put out these great books, and I guess MLJ was a natural for them. So, they came to me and they said, hey, can you do this MLJ book? Archie came to me.
Yeah.
And it was pretty daunting. And it took me a while to figure out how it could be done. The bottom line is it couldn't have been done without two people. And one of those is Rick Offenberger, because he already had a Mighty Crusaders website going with a plethora of articles and interviews on it and a lot of historical information. And the other person is John B. Cook, who really came in and fleshed it out and really covered things that we didn't think about covering. We were a bit too close to the project, Rick and I, and we had a ton of material, but some of it was maybe a little bit redundant, like we had covered things a few times over, and so we needed John to really kind of fill in some blanks, and he did tremendously. So he also designed the book. So really, everybody brought something to the table. It was a team effort, but it doesn't exist without those other two guys. As far as I'm concerned, my role on it was I did some research for some new articles and interviews, and conducted some new interviews and wrote some new articles. I also reviewed and edited all the material and proofread it, fact checked it. So there was a lot of that. A lot of my stuff on that was behind the scenes. But we just wanted to put a book out that would kind of encapsulate the history of these characters. The other good thing about Tomorrow's is they had this great magazine called Alter Ego, and so we're also allowed to use previously published articles that were in that magazine about these heroes. And then Jeffrey Vaughn over at Gemstone Diamond Publications, I had written a few things for him with these heroes, and they allowed us to use those as well. So it was just like this team effort. Like it just, there's so many, there's 3 names on the cover of that book, but there really should be, a dozen or more names on the cover of that book, really, when all is said and done. So the book itself has been out, I think, since maybe 2015. Might have to look on the inside of the cover, but it's it's done well ever since.
I remember picking this up from you at New York Comic Con, the year it came out. So I'm just looking for the date.
Yeah,
find it inside for me. August 2016 came out.
16, okay.
Yeah, August
so
2016.
4 years old, and it's still.
Yeah,
from what we know from John, it still sells at conventions. People are still interested. We do panels on it. We did a panel last summer at San Diego Comic Con that was well attended and well received, and did a signing afterwards. And we just did one for WonderCon at home, virtually. The book just people are fascinated by these characters. And I would encourage anybody who's interested to actually look up the WonderCon at Home MLJ panel on YouTube as well, because we spent the whole time talking about it, and that was with Jeff Vaughn, who I mentioned, as well as Rick Offenberger and John B. Cook. So
I got to say, I'm a fan of these characters. I remember the first time, I don't remember the year, but the first time I saw them in the comic shop, they were different than Superman, Batman, all the characters. So I was kind of drawn to them. They were a little different. I have a bunch of issues somewhere around here, but I never followed them 100%, but I do enjoy the books that were out with them. So when this came out, it was great because I was able to learn so much more about these characters that I wasn't 100% familiar with, but I always enjoyed.
There's some history to them too, because first of all, well, it's Memorial Day, right? So I'm wearing my Captain America T-shirt here.
Yeah.
But the first patriotic comic book hero actually is the Shield. He was an MLJ character, and he predates Captain America by a year.
He's on the cover right here.
Yeah, and in fact, his costume, his chest insignia was the actual design of Captain America's original shield. Captain America, in his first story, had a triangular shield. Then they changed it to be round and aerodynamic, which was a plus for Captain America. But you have that character. You also had a character called the Comet, who was created by Jack Cole. And Jack Cole's my favorite comic book writer-artist of all time. He created Plastic Man. And the Comet is actually the first superhero who dies in a comic book.
Really?
In the 40s. He's the first character who dies. And his brother becomes a superhero. His brother becomes the Hangman as a result of the Comet's death. It's like, I'm going to go forward and, avenge criminals and crime and fight for justice, So, and you have people in there like Charles Bureau doing some work in MLJ. Gil Adams' first work actually was in some of the Silver Age Archie comics featuring the Fly. So there's a real heritage with these characters that people don't realize. Even the fact that they had those titles in the Silver Age, they had the Fly and they had the Double Life of Private Strong, which was a kind of a revamp of the Shield. And Simon and Kirby were doing those books, and everybody always goes on about DC and their revamps of the Flash and Green Lantern and all that as being the heralding of the Silver Age, and that's true. But also, the stuff that Archie was doing with the Fly and the Shield also brought in the Silver Age. They were together. They were on that parallel path. So,
I gotta say, I just was flipping through the book because I was going through it again, but there, chapter 9, it looks like an interview with you here. So I gotta reread it and see what it is. Do you remember anything from that? What was it about, or
from the interview?
Yeah, that you talked about.
No, I'm sure it was a whole bunch of stuff jumping around like I am now.
This is the new stuff. I don't know if you can see it. I remember a few years ago they tried to bring them back with the kids, like the kids of these guys.
The New Crusaders.
Yeah, the New Crusaders. I have a few of those too. They were pretty fun.
They keep coming up with different iterations of it. They don't let it die, which I'm happy for that. There have been long stretches where they lay dormant, but in recent times, Archie seems to be really open to keeping them going, which I think is good.
Yeah, no, I like that. I'd love to see more of those. I got to look for them at the comic shop. I do see them in trades, like older stuff, so that I pick up. Mike, did you have a question? Because I wanted to talk about something.
I was just even gonna say, like, because I because I was psyched about Archie doing those classic superhero characters, and I got the first collection. Maybe we've talked about this, Paul, and like for me, it wasn't there. So it is what it is. What it is. Everything they try, they try things that. You try it and see what happens. The one thing I was going to ask, I mean, maybe this is more of a good wrap-up question. I mean, since you really were like you said, the historian for Archie, if you have over 70, 80 years of Archie, do you have an all-time favorite story? Think about it. What is your?
I do. I actually do have an all-time favorite story.
Oh wow!
It's in Archie Americana Volume 1. That's the 40, and it's called Nobody's Dummy. And it starts out with the greatest line of dialogue ever in an Archie comic, and maybe even in any comic book, where Veronica says to Archie, "You always say you die for my sake, but you never do." and the story is just hilarious. It's this hilarious comedy of errors. It's very much what I would call, if you're familiar with pre-code movies, 1930s, before the code came in, movies were really very much PG-13 back then. They were like the equivalent of PG-13 in terms of innuendo and subject matter. And this story has a lot of innuendo, and it's all about all these misconceptions that are happening over a dummy, a mannequin, and it's hilarious. It's my all-time favorite Archie story.
Yeah. When I stepped away for a moment, because behind me I have a lot of my tomorrows. I have my modern masterworks, I have alter egos, I have my Krypton companion, all this stuff. But I also had some of my Cracked. You mentioned you worked for Cracked.
Yeah, I did a few things for Cracked.
Unfortunately, you're not in this one, but I just wanted to show it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. But talk a little bit about your Cracked time.
Oh, those were just some one-offs I did. I want to say the editor's name was a fellow named Lou Silverstone, and he liked my scripts, and I think I sold 3 scripts to him, 2 of which actually got drawn and published.
Okay.
And they were just spoofy things. One was a spoof of the MTV Video Music Awards, which I called the MTV Video Music Awards, and it wouldn't play at all now if you read it, because you would have to remember back to anybody who was popular back then. So there was another one I did. I can't remember what it was now, but I think it's the one Gary Fields drew, and Gary Fields was a great cartoonist. He also drew one of the Turtle stories that I wrote. So it was fun, but by the time that these things had been published, I was really getting ensconced in my role as a staffer at Archie, and really couldn't maintain, freelancing with any regularity. Occasionally I do a one-off, like I did the DC Showcase issue with Bibbo, which is great because it ended up being a lead story, and it was a lot of fun. I got to use all the supervillains of the time, like I got to use the Joker and Cheetah and Gorilla Grodd, and Bibbo telling these tall tales about how he wiped the floor with all of them, which was fun. And I did those Tex Avery stories for Dark Horse, but for the most part, I just kept my writing mainly to Archie stuff. Only occasionally ventured out to other places. So the Cracked thing kind of came and went. It was fun. I could say I did Cracked. Would have been great to do Mad, but that's really tough to do for
And
anybody.
not anymore either, since they don't exist anymore technically.
Right.
So.
But hey, it's an experience. It's another one of those things where that's the thing. Like, I'm really blessed that I've had a lot of great opportunities in this business. And on paper, my career may look like it's all over the place and fragmented and a variety of different things, but that's mainly because I choose it to be that way. Because I love to have the variety of experiences, and that people would say yes. That people would say yes, yeah, sure. Robert Conti, fellow I know, he was editing at Dark Horse, and I had known him when he ran a comic shop on Long Island, and we were going to do an independent comic together, and it never came to be. And he's the guy who said, "Hey, I know you love Tex Avery. You want to do this?" It's like, wow, yeah, of course I want to do that. The fact that they let me do the Bibbo story at DC and all these things, even this fellow Dave Ryan from Anvil Press, he said, "Hey, you want to work on this War of the Independence with all the humor characters?"
Mm-hmm.
In one issue, I got to write the Tick, Felix the Cat, Too Much Coffee Man, Cerebus. I mean, it's endless characters in this one issue, and so it's like just these opportunities come along, and I feel very blessed by that. I don't. It doesn't matter to me that they're not ongoing. I don't need to be a household name. I'm not looking for fame or fortune. It's just that I love, writing these things and having fun. Another one that came along, Erica Schultz, is this really terrific writer. She did a series called M3, and she was editing a book. I think it was for, I'm going to mess up the name of the publisher, maybe Northwest Press or something. They were doing a couple anti-bullying specials and raising money for anti-bullying initiative. So she asked if I want to do a story, and I did one, and I enlisted Chris Allen, who I mentioned earlier, from Ninja Turtles, to do the art. And like these things are just terrific opportunities. So now I'm at a stage in my life where I did a full-time gig for a long time at a major toy corporation, and that was great too. I got to write some animation for them, in addition to a lot of other kinds of writing. And now I'm in this zone where I'm seeking out opportunities for more animation writing. I'm getting some good feedback on that, and Dan Necrosis and I are talking about what can we do to bring back Conservation Corps, and I'm looking at comics as well. There's all everything out there. It's like an open road. So it's all great. And we touched on it earlier. One of my other loves and passions is film history. Mm-hmm. So I've gotten to speak at movie screenings, which is great, and I've gotten to write essays that have appeared in books. I wrote an essay in a book on the films of Vincent Price.
Yeah.
And I got to write a whole chapter on the films he made with Peter Lorre, which were the funny films. And so I get to do that too. I'm working on this book called Scared Silly, which I mentioned earlier. I've been working on it since 2009, and it's a compendium of reviews of all these old movies, shorts, and features from the silent era up through the mid-1960s, where comedians get mixed up in spooky situations. Because I find those films hilarious, and also I notice there's a lot of tropes that keep coming into play over and over again in those films. I'm also fascinated by the whole psychological aspect, because there's that fine line between screaming and laughing.
Yeah.
And that fine line between being scared and having that kind of relief of laughter, that comic relief. And, it's the cornerstone, it's the building block. I mean, if there wasn't all these old movies, there wouldn't have been Scooby-Doo, and there wouldn't have been Archie's Weird Mysteries, and there wouldn't have been any of this stuff. So that's a book. I've really started to dive into that project again, and I'm hoping that I'll finally get near completion of it. I have a ways to go because there's so many films to review, but recently I've made some really good headway again, and so it's just many opportunities.
Well, let me ask you kind of this is entertaining. You like you said, you have a very diverse a diverse background in film history. Like you said, toys, obviously comic books and stuff. What is your dream project?
My dream project right now?
Dream project. If they said, Paul Castiglia, here are the reins to this world. Where would you like to go?
Oh, gee, I haven't thought about that in years because I've really embraced the kind of go for multiple possibilities and projects ethos, but it used to be writing the screenplay to a Plastic Man movie.
Oh wow!
So maybe it would still be that. Maybe that would still be a dream project.
You know, it's funny you said. Sometimes I know some people I've talked to call it like fan fiction, but when I need a break from my work, I take a property that I loved as a child and I try to redevelop it. So I don't consider it fan fiction. I kind of think if I was hired from a company, how would I redevelop stuff? And I've actually, years ago, I actually wrote a Plastic Man story because I'm such a huge fan of him myself.
Did you have?
Well, that's what you do, you know. Yeah. I mean, that's what you do. I actually have a Plastic Man Christmas story tucked away that I wrote, and you know, maybe I need to break it back out and try to sell it to DC again if they plan any more Christmas specials. But yeah, you gotta look at all those angles. Another thing I want to do, and I'm not going to name names because this is. I don't want anybody snatching it out from under me, but there's like a few animation characters that if I were able to get the financial resources someday, I would love to just kind of buy them out, lock, stock, and barrel outright. Mm-hmm. I'd love to own a few classic animation characters, and there's a few I have in mind.
Now
I'm not telling you who they are.
Now, just to go back to Plastic Man for a minute, since you both have written some Plastic Man story, I'm gonna ask you, because this is just me being the dork of the '80s, the late '70s, and the '80s. So your Plastic Man stories, are these with or without Penny and Bad Luck Hula?
Oh, come on!
I will be honest. Mine are without.
Yeah.
Mine
had Woozy Winks.
I had to ask.
Yeah,
Some people, not many, like Penny and Hula.
Well, I watched that show. Look, I was a kid. Yeah. I think that show came on towards the end of my junior high tenure, right before high school, and I watched it because it was still Plastic Man morphing into stuff. It looked cool.
Yeah, I mean,
I liked the voice. I wasn't. Then I was kind of like, why Hula Hula when you could just do Woozy Winks?
Yeah.
But it's not like the first time.
I mean, it's good character.
But I will say this: in all the new little Plastic Man shorts and appearances, it's always been Woozy.
Yeah. Woozy's great. But like I get it. I mean, if you're a comic book geek when you're a kid and you've been exposed to 1940s Plastic Man stories like I was, my dad would take me in. I grew up in New Jersey. He would take me into New York City to the conventions at the Penta Hotel, and it would be like a Sunday, and it would be like the last hour before they were going to close, and he'd haggle. He'd get like 3 Golden Age issues for the price of 2, and they were beat up copies, but I ate them up and I read them. And of course I knew Woozy, but if I was a television network executive, I would have, back in 1978, 79, when this was being developed, I would have looked at it and said, no kid's going to want to watch Woozy Winks. I mean, I get why they did that.
Yeah.
It's their mindset. I wouldn't necessarily agree with their mindset, but I get the atmosphere within a television network where they're going to say no kid wants to watch Woozy Winks. Well, now we watch it, but the people watching the shorts are already like, big time comic geeks, and it's a different world now because people know the source material.
They didn't use Woozy in the most recent iteration too. There was a 6-part miniseries, and Woozy wasn't in there. Like he met like a little kid in there, which was a different thing. Like I was expecting Woozy to show up in there, but they didn't use him. So I mean, they're always reinventing things. That's how
yeah. I mean, that's so true, and anything can happen too. Like they had late '70s. DePayday Freeling did a Fantastic Four, and and Human Torch had been optioned. There's an urban legend that kids are going to set themselves on fire, but the truth was, Human Torch was actually optioned for something else, like a movie or a TV series or something, like a separate thing, and so it just wasn't available. So they had the title was Fantastic Four, so they said, "Oh well, what are we going to do? Oh well, Star Wars is popular. We'll put in a robot. People love R2D2." So
I didn't realize that was the Path Freeling. I thought that was Hanna-Barbera. Was it?
Penny Freeling did the late 70s Fantastic Four. Hanna-Barbera did a 67 Fantastic Four with all the original Fantastic Four characters.
Oh, I didn't realize. I thought
Hanna-Barbera Fantastic Four is actually really well done because it stays pretty faithful to the comics. Despite being limited animation at the time, it's good.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you a little bit because we only have about 10 minutes left before our next guest comes on. I want to ask you a little bit about your dark horse, Tex Avery, because Tex Avery, well known in the animation world, created some great characters. What's it like writing characters that you grew up loving, and is there any challenge trying to write in a style to keep those characters true to who they are, without trying to reuse what's already been known about them?
All right. Well, I can only answer this by going back in time again. So I watched the cartoons when I was a kid without it registering, exactly that these were all Tex Avery cartoons and the history of them. And then as I got more into animation, I bought the Leonard Maltin book of Mice and Magic.
Great book.
So I learned more about Tex Avery through that. But the linchpin to all of it was I was selected in my high school with a bunch of other kids to go to something called Boy State, which some people might be familiar with. It's kind of like you spend a week learning about how governments and societies run and all that type of thing. So. Yes. It was on some college campus, and one day we're staying overnight there for a week. One day I go to the college campus bookstore, and I see this book, Tex Avery, King of Cartoons, by Joe Adamson. And I picked it up and I read it, and then it was like, I know everything about Tex Avery now, at least what was in that book.
Yeah.
And that he originated all these gags. They started with him, and what they were, and how he used them, and how he sometimes reused them, and how there was this whole style. So it just was inbred in me. And then when I was in college, I was just ODing on the cartoons because by then I could buy video cassettes of the best MGM Tex Avery cartoons, right? In the 1980s. So I just really just ate, drank, and slept Tex Avery. So by the time I got to do these things, my approach was to try to do Tex Avery, but on the comic page. And there's this whole history of comic books. A lot of them were put out by Western Publishing under either the Dell or Gold Key or Whitman imprints of comics based on animated characters. And they tended to kind of veer off from what was great about the cartoons because they couldn't do the visual gags, So they made them more like domestic comedies, with Bugs and Daffy and Donald Duck and Woody Woodpecker, and sometimes they were wonderfully drawn, but they really were kind of like not reflecting the cartoons. And I thought some of the other people who weren't writing these Tex Avery's might handle it that way, but I'm going to try to make them like the cartoon. And so I did. I really tried to fill them up with the same type of visual gags. And the greatest review I ever got in my life came from Scott Shaw, the great cartoonist and comic book artist and animator, who you guys know. And he basically he had been drawing some of the stories. He didn't draw mine, but he drew a few others. But he had said at the time that those came out, he said that my stories came the closest anyone's ever come to actually reflecting an actual Tex Avery animated cartoon on the comic book page.
Wow.
And I was like, whoa, that's what I was going for. So for me, it really was about capturing the essence of Tex Avery. Yeah. For me, it was like, don't do it like an old Dell Key or Dell or Gold Key. As much as I like the art in those, I was like, nah, I want to make them like somebody's watching the Tex Avery cartoon. Yeah, there has to be some dialogue, but got to make it visual gags, and that's how I approach it.
Yeah, because I remember studying, Tex Avery when I studied animation, and his stuff's all about timing. And that's how the jokes work, how long time. And it was like, and my thought is writing it in a comic is much more challenging than writing it for animation. So that was kind of like, I wanted to know how you were approaching it, because he's
and some of that was, I'd have to go back and look at them, but some of that was also kind of timing it out by the page, so that you'd have the payoff like in the last panel, or you'd have all the setup on the one page, and then the payoff would be in the first panel on the following page. But really kind of trying to be cognizant of that timing for sure.
Okay. Mike, do you have a question before we end? We're gonna wrap up in about 5 minutes.
I was going to share. We talked about things that we've loved from our childhoods, and I did ask Paul, because this is a fun time to pull this out from the Archie archives as I was digging through the books for different things. And I know you didn't work on this, Paul, but this is one of my favorite stories, and a lot of people forget about this.
Oh, that's from the TV movie.
Yes.
Yeah. Archie to Riverdale and back again.
I had to pull that out because it's Scott Shaw does his funny covers or whatever. What is it called? Oh gosh, I can't think of what it is. Oddball comics. And I mean, we want to talk about oddball comics. That movie and that comic book. What an oddball comic book, that movie.
Yeah, they were working on that before I started working on staff, but it actually aired
1990.
Months after I started working there.
Well, a little bit of trivia. That aired in May of 1990.
May 6, 1990.
May 6, 1990. The same night, so that same night on NBC, because you had like 227 and Alf or whatever from 8 to 9. That same night on NBC at 7 o'clock was The Magical World of Disney, which was the Muppets at Walt Disney World. A week later, Jim Henson passed away. So that was literally 30 years ago. So that was not that long ago, 30 years ago. So
the reason I know that date so well is because Archie had arranged with some local bar and grill to have the whole office go there and watch it on their little TV screen, because back then it was a little box set too, with a tube and everything.
Oh my gosh!
But I couldn't go because it was my brother's wedding that night.
Oh.
I said, but I just look at like some of the images on here, like you got Mr. Lodge, which was the guy from Nancy Silverkite said Archie held a party. He had Mr. Lodge, who was played by James Noble from Benson. So I remember watching, I'm like, hey, I know that guy from Benson. But they covered in, like, of course, Lauren Holly was Betty, and look what they did with her there.
Yeah. The fellow who played Jughead was really a fine actor.
He passed
away.
I
found out that he passed away.
Sam Whipple.
Sam Whipple, but he was terrific. He really, his scenes were some of the best scenes in the movie. But anyway,
it would have been interesting to have seen, because that was what the back in the day when they did those movies of the week. That was like a backdoor pilot, So like like I said, 90s Archie. This was totally 90s Archie for me, and like I was excited, thinking like, ooh, maybe this will become a TV show. I want to see what Grown Up Archie is all about. So that's my silly Archie flashback.
Okay, we got about a minute left. I wanted to ask you, Paul, about promoting anything. You're Scared Silly.
Yeah, Scared Silly is my ongoing
Where can people find it?
So if you go to www.scaredsilly by Paul Castiglia, that's one word, .blogspot.com, you'll find it. And on the page, there's an alphabetical listing of kind of rough drafts of reviews that I've done already. Some of them need some editing and cleaning up, but that looks right, what you put there on the screen.
Yeah,
I might actually be doing some watch parties at some point.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, with some public domain films that are in that realm, trailers and cartoons and shorts and features.
And this will be on Facebook?
Kind of like, I don't know yet how I'm going to do it. It's just something I've been kicking about in my mind. But, hopefully I'll be doing that at some point, and that should be fun. And, another way to bring it to people rather than just, text to read. Not that there's any problem with that. People should be reading, but it's also fun to actually look at the things that we're talking about, right? So,
right. Yeah, and I don't know. Our next guest isn't here yet, but we're gonna wrap up anyway, just to keep you on your schedule. I know that you want to kind of stay on that today. And he just appeared, our next guest. So I want to thank you, Paul, for joining us. It's been great chatting with you.
Thank you, guys. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, always a good time. Thank you so much.
We're definitely going to want to have you back at some point and go into more detail about certain things. All right?
Sure.
Well, I'd love to really talk about Scared Silly and the ideas you have, some of the old movies that you're looking at and talking about. So.
Perfect. Thanks again, guys. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. Thank you again, Tom.
All right. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
All right, Mike, you gonna hang around for a little bit? Or?
I'll say hello, and then I gotta run and take care of some other business here.
Okay. Well, our next guest is Ramon Gil.
Ramon Gil.
He is the creator of a bunch of stuff. I don't have the list in front of me. We put it on there. The Men from I think it was called DARPA. Centurions, I think, or Senturies, and I'll let him tell because I don't want to screw it all up. I think he's a talented writer and artist and editor and art director. So let's bring him on.
Come in, Ramon Gil.
Hey, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're all good here. How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you guys doing during this lockdown?
We're doing good.
I'm fantastic. I'm loving it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, my wife just nodded the same thing.
Yes. You've been, but you were quarantined outside of your home for a while, correct? Or
in the beginning, my wife had a cough, so we have a business in Brooklyn, which is pretty well stocked. There's a bed upstairs and everything like that. I stayed there for the first 2 months practically.
Wow.
And it was a lot of me time. More me time than I ever thought I'd ever get. The most me time I've ever had since I've been married. And I've been married 20 years.
But it's good time to get good creative juices going, done, right?
Yeah. I'm sorry?
You're able to use some of the creative juices at that point and get,
Yeah, actually, but I had a lot of work because I'm in grad school right now, so I was still doing grad school work. I was still working on the business, and I teach as well, so it was pretty busy. My last class was school finally ended last Wednesday, so it's only been
nice
this past week that I've actually had some free time.
Okay. All right. So for those who don't know, you want to tell us a little bit about you and your background and what you do?
I'm going to sign because I have to go get some stuff.
Oh yeah, no, I'm sorry about that.
Because I'm a teacher too, so
where do you teach?
Where do I teach, or what do I teach? I'm sorry. Where I teach in the Bronx.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a
middle. Michael?
What's that?
Do you teach with Michael?
No. I'm in Yonkers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but no, I teach in the Bronx. I teach middle school. So someone was just pointing out to me before, is like, yep, back to school tomorrow. This is our first day off. Since quarantine began. So, it's back to the grind tomorrow. Just do what we can for these kids. So, I'm
a middle schooler too. So.
Yeah, so it's fun. But no, thank you again, Ramon, for joining us tonight.
Sure.
You and Michael have a great time. And we will see everybody later. I'll see everybody later on this weekend in IncrediChat. So we'll catch you guys later.
See you later, Mike. And let me just make this easier on us. Got a bigger screen now. So yeah, tell us about yourself, kind of the work that you've done, and stuff like that.
Sure. My name is Ramon Gil. I started off as an illustrator back in the 90s, and I did some work for Vortex Comics out of Toronto, doing a lot of NASCAR comic books.
Okay.
But then I moved to New York City, and I realized very quickly I couldn't live in New York City off what I was making as an illustrator in comics. And right around the same time, the whole industry tanked. 94, remember that? And
well, 94. I was just graduating high school, so we have a little bit of an age difference, I think.
Yeah, not too long. I think I must have been like 26 or something like that. 25, 26.
Okay.
So I switched to advertising, and I've been in advertising for about 25 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then about in 2014, a good friend of mine, I noticed, Amy Chu, I noticed was had gone from like, I think she was doing like management consulting to writing comic books.
Okay.
And I figured, you know what, if she can do it, you know, I should give it a shot too. So I took her out to lunch, and she gave me all this advice, and I've been following that advice. And since then, I've been part of a few anthologies and organized some of my own anthologies. I've come out with a few books: The Men from DARPA, Sci-Fi's, The Hard Code Senturies. I got to do some work for Dynamite, for Atlas Unleashed, for Pronto, a few others too. And I also run the Comic Arts Workshop, which is a monthly meeting where we bring in guest speakers. And I teach at FIT, where I also organize the Diversity Comic Con.
Yeah, I do want to talk to you about. I know tonight's really more about how to pitch to publishers, but you have such a wide variety of things that you do that I want to talk a couple of things.
Sure.
With the Comic Arts Workshop, are you doing that digitally right now during the like virtually during the quarantine time?
Yeah, the last two events have been online, and it's actually presented a really great opportunity, because for the first time we can bring in guest speakers who are not in New York City.
Yeah.
Because usually it's live, so it has to be a guest speaker who lives in New York City or who's near New York City. But for the first time, we brought in guests who were not in New York City.
Okay.
And actually, I like that a lot. And we might actually, even after the pandemic, we might go ahead and like alternate. You know?
Okay, so sometimes virtually, sometimes live, type of stuff. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I would love to,
you know, and plus, not just the guest speakers can be from out of town.
Yeah.
The audience can be from anywhere.
Yeah.
So,
and this is a free event, or do you charge for it?
It is a free event. We do have a workshop where we actually create comic stories, and that we will be charging for. We did it back last year. It was a trial run, and we produced an anthology as a result of everybody attending the workshop, and we'll be doing it again in July.
Okay, that's cool. And the Diversity Con, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I teach at Fashion Institute of Technology, which is a SUNY school. And it's my goal. One of the things I've also wanted to do is, because I teach web design and I teach marketing over there.
Okay.
But what I really want to teach is comic books.
Who doesn't? You know.
So what I did was I proposed that they have a Comic-Con on campus, and a friend encouraged me to attend the Diversity Council meeting. And I proposed it there, and they liked the idea, and they approved my proposal. They funded it, and so now we've had done it for 2 years, and they want it to happen again this year. We just don't know if it's going to be live or virtual.
Well, either way, I'd like to attend. I know you've invited me both years, and I haven't been able to do it because it's in the middle of the week, right? It's not like the weekend.
Thursday the first time, and it's Friday this last time.
Okay.
I'm trying to get them to move it towards the weekend.
Yeah.
But because because they want it to be on a day when the students are on campus.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And the employees are on campus, because if you do it on a weekend, that means they have to pay people to come in on the weekend. So
yeah, no, I
remember the staff for the conference center are already there.
Yeah, when I worked for the college, I spent 16 years of college. I actually talked to a couple of times about it. One of our issues came out to size just of the school, but the other thing was, how can you do it during the day? How can you make sure teachers, security, things like that would come in, students would come in on weekends, stuff like that. So I understand the situation.
Well, the reason why I think they were very enthusiastic about this is because since I approached the diversity council, it's actually what they do is they like to make it the end cap to Civility Week. So we have this thing called Civility Week. So there's a whole series of events going on that week, with Diversity Con being the last event for the week.
Oh,
so,
okay.
Yeah. So it worked out perfectly.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about what, and if you need to talk about the books that you created while you're doing this, let's talk about the pitching to publishers, like
sure.
Why you came on today. So, we talked about different topics. You wanted to do pitching to publishers, which is, I think, a fantastic topic for our audience, because a lot of our audience are people who are comic artists, or people who recently graduated from school, or just independent people who want to get their stuff out there. So I thought this was a perfect topic for our audience, and I'm excited to talk to you about this. So I don't want to say what advice would you give, but what are the steps that you would go through when you say, I have an idea and I want to pitch it, whether it's Marvel, Image, whatever it is? What are the steps that you're going to take to do this?
Well, the biggest thing about pitching your comic book project to a publisher is what happens before you actually pitch.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of things that will really help you if you do this. I'm not saying that you can't pitch right away without having done these things, but these things really help. Mm-hmm. Number one is you want to network and build relationships with people in the industry, mm-hmm. especially in the companies that you want to pitch to. And the more, the better. Don't just try to get to know people at Image. Try to get to know people at lots of different places. Yeah. Even if they're not working there now, just build relationships with everyone, with people. And Greg Pak gave me this advice years ago: build relationships with your peers, because the people who are industry or who are way ahead of you already have their network of people that they like to bring in.
Yeah.
But if you network with the people who are your peers who are at the same level as you, as your careers all progress, you become each other's network, mm-hmm. right? So make sure you have those relationships. Try to build those relationships. Try to network.
That's actually something I tell my students. I always tell them, work together, be friendly with each other, because at the end of the day, these are the people you're going to be in contact with, whether you work together or not. They may have a job that they know you could do, but if you guys are not, not friendly right now, why would they recommend you? So always be kind, always be friendly, just be
reliable as well. Be
somebody reliable.
Yeah. Exactly.
Meeting deadlines is the key to everything anyway in the industry.
And that's a great segue into the other thing you need to do. Mm-hmm. Is it's better if you can show a body of work, which means just make comics, even if you can't work for Marvel or DC or whatever. At least put out little things on your social media. Try to get into anthologies. Show people, or show these people that you're able to produce. I see guys who out of the gate, they have plans for a 300-page, epic.
Yeah.
And unless you're, and fine if you're going to draw it yourself, but if you're trying to get other people to draw it for you, or if you're trying to work with other people, nobody wants to commit to 300 pages with somebody who doesn't have a track record.
Yeah.
So start small. Start with a page, 2 pages, 3 pages, 4 pages. I think the very first thing I ever did was a page, and then I just kept progressing after that. I kept submitting it to anthologies, and they get accepted, and eventually I have a body of work, so that when I do approach a collaborator or a publisher, I can say, hey, I've got this whole body of work.
Yeah.
That shows that that I'm a known quantity, that you can count on me. So let's see, that's the relationships, that's the body of work, reputation. So now, hopefully, because of those things, the other thing is a following. I knew there were 3 things. I always do things in 3s. So a following, either on social media like Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, or what I prefer, because I come from a business background, I like email lists.
Yes.
So over the years, I've been building up this email list of people in the industry, of people who want to be industry. And if you want to be on my email list, you can just go to my website, ramongil.com, and you can contact me, and I'll put you on the list.
All right. And that was Ramon. Can you say that again?
Gil, RAMONGIL.com.
Okay. I'm going to I'm just going to put it up on the screen.
Sure.
Ramon Gil. What'd you say? Gmail? No, RamonGill.com.
.com, right.
Yeah.
There's also a page in there for the Comic Arts Workshop, and there's also a page in there for Diversity Comic Con.
Okay.
So anyway, so you build an audience, you build your reputation, and you build your body of work. And then when you're ready to pitch, you're in a much, much better position because you know people in the industry. Hopefully you have contacts at the publishers, and you have an audience. So here are the things that are important in the pitch. You have to have a good concept. Usually a high concept idea is something that people are familiar with, but you've done a twist. You've got to turn it on its ear. Yeah. And some examples of this are like Sex Criminals by Matt Fraction and Chip Zdarsky. I mean, it's been done to death wherein time stops and people, do things while time is stopped, right? But they took the concept and they made it time stops when they're having sex.
Okay.
So that was taking an old concept and turning it on its ear. Another thing is Smile by Rena Tagelmeyer, who's probably the most successful or the best-selling graphic novelist today.
Yes.
And her first book was called Smile, which was a coming of age for a girl who was, I think, in junior high or something like that.
Yeah, actually, a lot of junior high kids read it. Every time I'm in classes, like 5th grade and above,
right?
That's the graphic novel they pull out usually.
But the twist is this. It's not just about coming of age. It's about coming of age because of her braces.
Yes.
Right? So that's the twist. It wasn't just about some coming of age. There's so many coming of age books in graphic novels and movies. But this was focused about her and her teeth. So that was different. And then another last example, I'm not sure if I'm familiar with this. It's an indie book by Jeff Darrow, Shaolin Cowboy. I don't even have to explain.
Yeah.
What the twist is. Shaolin Cowboy. I mean, it sells itself, right?
Yeah.
So have a high concept. Have a concept that people are familiar with, but turn it on its head, turn it on its ear, twist it around, make it more interesting than it normally is.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. There's lots of things actually in the pitch, but I'll just go over three, maybe a few more. Pitch the relationship. People really don't care about who's fighting who, what the plot is. What they care about are the people and their relationships. Why did so many of us guys, read X-Men or Teen Titans in the 80s, right? Not because of the battles or because of the supervillains. It was because of the relationships between the characters. Between Robin and Starfire, between Illyana and Colossus. Those were the things that drove us, right, to read the books. It was great adventure, and we didn't realize it. We were kids, right? But we were buying the book because we wanted to know what's going on between the relationships with these guys. Another example is Calvin and Hobbes. I don't think Calvin would have been this popular strip if it weren't for Hobbes, and vice versa. It was always about the interaction between these two. Yeah. It wasn't a love story or romance, but it was about what they accomplished together, what they did together, their adventures together. Yeah.
Exactly. That's considered probably the greatest comic strip besides Peanuts ever created. It had a 10-year run. I have a print of the final strip above me right here. And
I have all the collected editions.
Oh, so do I. That's behind me right there. It's. I mean, like, I remember reading that because when the strip came out, it ended, I believe, in 94, 95, something like that. I was close to the age, maybe a year older or so, as Calvin was when that strip came, and I read it every time I saw the newspaper.
Yeah.
To that, when that last strip came, I actually remember reading in the paper and tearing up. Yeah. And it was because of the stories and and their final scene, "Let's go adventuring." That last line sums up their entire comic. And
if you think about it, that's also a concept that was turned on its ear. I mean, you see a lot of stories about little boys and their best friend is an animal, except he's a stuffed animal.
Yeah.
right? If he comes to life.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the other another famous comic book series that's all about relationships, I think, is Archie.
Yes.
I mean, Archie is like the ultimate love triangle between who?
Betty and Veronica and Archie there.
Exactly.
And
Right.
you know what? I don't know if you heard, but Paul Castiglia was just on,
Yeah,
and he wrote a bunch of Archie stuff. We were just talking about him. And yesterday I interviewed Nancy Siebelkleit, who's the co-CEO of Archie at the moment. Yeah. So
yeah, she's a very nice lady.
yeah, good stuff there. She was great yesterday, and Paul's always fantastic.
So in your pitch,
Yeah.
you know, definitely talk about the relationships between the characters, the backstory. And by the way, I have a couple of pitch packets that I'm happy to share with people. Just email me from my website and contact me there. I'm happy to share my pitch packets with people.
Okay. Actually, speaking of that, when you're saying pitch the relationships, pitch this, do this, you are talking about putting a pitch package together to send to someone. You're not.
Right. I'm sorry, I didn't make that
talking
clear.
to someone. Yeah. Oh, well, look, Archie has this thing. No, just read the overall ideas. A group of kids in high school in Riverdale, and it's, their adventures together. It's kind of like what Archie is. But when you say here, it's basically, you call it a pitch package. In animation, it would be like a pitch Bible, so it understands the relationships, how the characters are, who they are. So it's a different.
Yeah, so let me backtrack. When I say pitch, I'm talking about you are sending a proposal to a publisher of a possible book that you would like to do for them, and that's called a pitch.
Mm-hmm.
Very often, and some publishers, they'll accept unsolicited pitches, and some publishers will only accept pitches if they ask you, right? And that all goes back to what I talked about earlier: your relationships with people in the industry, your track record, your following. That will increase the likelihood that they will either ask you to pitch, or that they will consider you when you send a pitch in.
Mm-hmm.
I actually just recently pitched a proposal. I was asked to pitch the proposal to a publisher, and it was because of the relation. I had a relationship with somebody who knew one of the editors, and they contacted me, asked me to pitch. And I showed them they saw my body, or they saw my past work, and they thought, we're looking for something kind of like this.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they were concerned about my social media or my following, but definitely my body work was a factor.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that I was introduced by somebody that they knew, that I knew, and it was actually somebody who was a guest speaker at Comic Arts Workshop. So
that's awesome.
She recommended me.
Let me just cut you off for 1 second. I want to say, because all this stuff you're talking about, building relationships, also, right now, everyone's still basically under quarantine. I mean, we're allowed out a bit, but not that much. Mike, who you just met, who was in the beginning, and me have been saying this since this started. You guys now have all the time in the world to be doing this stuff. Figuring out. I mean, I got sick. I had COVID. I was out for a month. I'm trying to get back still into the flow of things, but I was in the flow of things of building my own work, and starting to produce stuff again. This is the time to do it. We have the social media connections now that you could be talking with people. One of the reasons we started IncrediChat was to bring this type of stuff to help inspire people. Most also because our IncrediCon, we had to cancel that, but we wanted to inspire people to do stuff, and that's why we're bringing on people like you and Paul and all the people that we've had, giving the people advice, making the connections. You're telling people, email me through my website, go to my website, email. That's a way to make a connection right there,
Yeah.
You can reach out to people on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, and just message these people and build that relationship right now. A lot of artists are doing these streams, whether it's just them drawing on streams or they're being interviewed in some way. Comment, reach out, and make those connections right now, since we can't actually attend cons, which is one of the best places for us to make connections. So I'm sorry, but you can continue. I just wanted to say that.
You're right.
So
I guess the other big thing that's part of I would say is a part of a should be part of a pitch package is speak with your own voice.
Yes.
You know, I mean, the tendency is to see what's out there, and everybody's doing vampires or zombies. Let's do a vampire or zombie. And I believe that you should really find the story that's inside you, that's close to your heart, or that the story you really want to tell. You know, Marjane Satrapi, she did Persepolis, which was a bestseller. Will Eisner did Contract with God, which is the very first graphic novel.
Yes, I have that behind me too. Love it.
And then Daredevil was a third string character until Frank Miller brought it into the realm of noir and crime, which was what he wanted to tell. And all of a sudden, Daredevil went from this third tier character to to the top of the charts.
Yeah.
So tell the story you really want to tell, not the story you think the market wants or the people want. Tell the story that you want to tell. Tell the story that's in your heart.
Yeah. The passion that you have will come across if you're able to communicate it properly. And that is something like they will know if you give a good pitch, you know, obviously the company has to like it or not, but if you can show that you have passion for it, they know you'll do a good job on it.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then a couple of other things, make it readable, shoot short paragraphs, use subheads, and you should make your pitch look as good as a book. You know, when you putting together the pitch, if you can design, if you have some design skills, or ask a friend to help you design it, and I have some examples of that because I'm originally a graphic designer, so I have that advantage. But definitely do not skimp on how the pitch package should look like. When people look at the pitch package, they should say, "Wow, this person really put a lot of effort into it."
Yeah.
You know, that should be the reaction. It should not be, And then highlight your experience. If you have skills that translate into the comic book industry, in my case, design and marketing, highlight that in your pitch. You know, because you're gonna have a bio in there anyways. So might as well talk about how your past experience can help you with this comic project.
Now, how many pages should this pitch package be, would you estimate?
I would say maybe 15 to 20.
15.
It should have it should have a page with your concept, with a synopsis, with your characters, with your bios, and maybe 10 pages of sample art.
Now, would that be finished sample art?
As finished as you can get it.
Okay.
You know, so if you want, some people have said to include the script for the whole book, and some people have said don't. So that's just up to you. Don't worry about these publishers stealing it or whatever, because you have to show somebody. You know, and if you send it to reputable publishers, it should be okay. I'm not sure if I would send it to rinky-dink little independents, but
you got to figure out
a track record.
Yeah.
You know, and also, what was the other thing I wanted to say? Oh yeah, think about cross-marketability, meaning this would also make a good movie, it would make a good storybook, it would make a good... I mean, I would say that's optional, but if you think your concept is really good, that's actually a good factor to put in there. Something that can translate to different media.
That's. I just want to say, I don't know if they're still doing it. Maybe this is the record, but I know for years, back when all the Marvel movies started coming out, everybody was trying to option comics for comic book movies, and so a lot of people were getting into comics thinking it would be a good way to get into the movie industry. Is that something you recommend people doing, or would you rather than just say, go write a movie and try to pitch the movie? Write your treatment and try to pitch that.
You know what? That seems like to be the obvious answer, is to go pitch a movie.
Yeah.
But I would say it's okay to just make a comic book also, for a couple of reasons. Number one, to me, when I come up with a story and I write a story, yes, I'm thinking about it as a movie, but I don't care. All I want is I want to tell the story.
Yeah.
Right? And I can tell the story in a comic book for a fraction of what it costs to make a movie.
Exactly.
And plus, once you have the comic book, you have proof of concept. If you still want to pitch the movie, you now have the perfect pitch packet for it, right?
And possibly a fan base, too.
Possibly a fan base. I mean, when the Wachowski brothers pitched The Matrix, they first made a comic book. It wasn't for publication; it was just for themselves. That they showed to studios, and that's what helped them get The Matrix produced.
Oh wow!
Right?
I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, they created a comic book. I'm not sure if they created a full comic book, but they definitely created a comic book that they use in their pitch packet. I'll tell you an interesting story. I'm not sure if it illustrates any lesson that I'm trying to teach here, but it was interesting because I got invited by Nickelodeon to actually pitch, right? So I went in and I pitched my series, The Men from DARPA, which is a bunch of geeky scientists who go on this espionage adventures, even though they're not supposed to, but they keep finding themselves in these situations, and they use their science knowledge to get themselves out of that situation. I thought this would be great, a science show for Nickelodeon, right?
Yeah.
So I went in there, and they had a producer and a director. I don't know who was in there, and so I told them all about the concept. They said, "That's a great concept, but number one, it has guns, which was a no-no for Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
Number two, there are no kids in my story, and number three, the jokes are for grown-ups."
Yeah.
Right. And so what I said was, well, you know what? I've been thinking of retooling this as the kids from DARPA. And they gave me a really good lesson. They said, you know what? That sounds like a great idea, but we have a list of 100 other people whose pitches are ready to go right now.
Yeah.
So call us when you've made that book.
Yeah.
Right. So even though the concept was good, even though I was willing to make the changes, the competition is fierce.
Yeah.
They already had a list of 100 other people who also had pitches, who probably were ready to go right there and then. And mine was.
Yeah.
So I guess the lesson for me is to know who you're pitching to.
Yeah, I was gonna say when I heard the guns, I mean I know a little bit about Nickelodeon with their stuff and how they work with that. I was like, oh no, you should have dropped kids in there real quick. That was like my first thought, I had a character that I was having a friend of mine write as a comic, and it never fully came to fruition. So I've been playing around with it, and I actually aged him down to a child, thinking that it might be better to pitch to a kid's thing like that or something. I'm not going to name anything right now. I'll tell you off the air maybe one day privately. But it was I thought it was a really fun idea. But I have to finish the pitch Bible. Now I believe you let me look at one of your pitch packages before. I think it was the Men from DARPA.
Men from DARPA.
Which I might still have a copy of. I don't know. It was a really nice layout, and I wish I had it so I can show some. Like I had it set up that I could show on here a little bit. But
I just have to go to my website. I'm happy to send it to you.
Yeah. But what I was going to say is, was that your first like fully fleshed out, or did you do pitch packages before that one?
I think that must have been my second or third one.
All right, so. And each one, do you learn something from by the way you work and the way you pitch it? Do you change it up, or is it like, no, this is my layout, this is what I'm doing?
Oh, I'm always learning. One of the things that I've learned since then is, because I'm doing another pitch now, is that what I learned since then is that I try to get feedback from people in the industry. Like, yes. I'm working on a pitch now and I thought it looked great, and then I just sent it to an editor at one of the big publishing houses, and I said, I'm not submitting this. He's a friend of mine. I was submitting. I just want to get some feedback, and he showed me all the stuff that could be better, and I didn't see it before I sent it to him. So now, whenever I'm working on anything, I always get feedback. I'm working on another thing, and it's just at the synopsis stage at this point, and I sent it to a few established writers in the industry, and they gave me their feedback. And it's like, oh my God, I could not believe I didn't see these things, you know.
But also, you're giving it to people that you trust. I mean, you got to realize, you know, you don't just want to go to your best friend or your parents or something. They're going to be like, it's good, you know, you got to go do it. You want to give it to people.
I've been sending these to people who are professionals in the industry.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, you want to send it to people who you have a relationship with, probably.
Exactly.
These actually know what they're talking about. Right. You know.
And that's the other thing is I didn't send it to just anybody. I didn't send it to just people who were in the industry. I sent it to people whom I had relationships with.
Yeah.
You know, people that I actually have met in person, people who I've collaborated with on other things.
Yeah.
You know, or who have been guests at my comic arts workshop.
I really want to attend one of those.
The comic arts workshop actually, the reason why I started it was because I hate going to bar cons. Bar cons are when people hang out at the bars after a Comic Con.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't drink, so I don't hate it, but I just don't feel comfortable going to bar cons.
I'm the exact same way. I don't drink either. That's not my scene.
Right.
Yeah.
So now I feel more comfortable going to bar cons, but it's still a very hard place to network because it's loud. You can't hear anything. People are half drunk. So I started Comic Arts Workshop so that I can invite people over and have a conversation with them and ask them all the questions that I've always wanted to ask.
Yeah.
And there's an audience there, and I build a relationship with them. So the people that I just got signed a contract for was through somebody I brought in at Comic Arts Workshop. The one of the guys that I sent the synopsis to was formerly a guest, and this guy is like a published author, a couple of best-selling novels. And then the other writer that I sent it to, you would know his name once I mentioned it. But I interviewed him for my blog before, so we had that relation. And then I've since met him in person at Comic Cons. So these are all, and all this would not be possible if I didn't have these relationships with people.
Yeah.
The editor that I sent my pitch packet to has attended several of our Comic Arts Workshop events, and that's how I know him. So it's important that you really build those relationships, create those relationships, and all that means is oftentimes just friending them on Facebook, and don't bombard them with things. Just build that relationship and look for opportunities where you can become, you can strengthen that relationship. Maybe comment on something, or always give something. Don't ask for things. Give something.
Yeah.
When that one writer that I just mentioned came out with a book, I offered to do an interview, and it wasn't just for my blog; it was for Bleeding Cool.
Oh, that's awesome.
So he got to plug his book on Bleeding Cool because I interviewed him.
Yeah.
And I think it was also carried. I was mentioned on The Beat. It was mentioned on a whole bunch of other websites because this guy was that popular. So build a relationship. Like do things for people. So.
Yeah. Be like I said, be friendly, help each other out. That's what it's about. I was talking with an artist a couple of days ago, before we started this IncrediWeek, and it was just a phone call from a friend I haven't talked to in a while, an artist and a writer. But it was because of that. He was like, "Would you like to be part of this project?" And I'm like,
"How do I thank you for inviting me?"
What?
By the way, thank you for inviting me.
Oh, anytime. I would love to have you. Like I said, one of the other people that was supposed to be on tonight with you was our friend Mark Maz, who I hope we can get on at some point, and you will be welcome to join him because you guys are awesome together anyway. But I would just love to have a conversation.
When is that?
I don't know. Mark and I need to figure that out. He just said weeknights weren't good for him, so I'm going to try to set up a weeknight type of thing for him. I mean a weekend, but yeah, like that's the thing. Like, Mark has been an editor. He's written stuff too. I don't know his full career off the top of my head, but he's a very helpful guy. He's one of those people that, like, I don't know if this I should say it's not bad, but like I'll text with him and he goes, I just really want to know, I appreciate your friendship. Like he's that good of a guy that when you get to know him, he's there.
Mark, a couple of years ago, I was in the hospital and Mark came to the hospital. It's like one of the few people who, one of the like maybe one of two or three creators, friends in the comic book industry came to the hospital.
Yeah.
And also this, I mean, I'm not sure. You and I brought you onto one of the panels, my panels at Hudson Valley Comic Con.
Exactly.
So I have this relationship, and I'm not sure if you were asking me to do this, and we didn't have that relationship.
Well, but I think we met originally through Pronto, correct?
Yeah, we've hung out at cons before.
Yeah, but that's the thing I'm saying. Like Pronto, do you still work with Pronto or?
In theory, I'm still at Pronto, but I'm not sure. We're sort of like in hibernation right now.
Okay. Just for those who don't know, Pronto Comics is a nonprofit comic company that helps people learn how to work with editors and art directors. And for about 2 years, I was the art director. And when I left, you took over. But you were coming to Pronto events, I believe, and that's how we originally met. So, but yeah, and that's the thing. And you know what, the comic community, even though it's filled with so many people, it's really small. We end up really meeting everybody and knowing each other. And I'll be honest, there's very few jerks in the industry. Very few that I've come in contact. Everybody's willing to be like, that's cool. Let's talk. Let's, help each other out.
I think the jerks don't last long.
Yeah. Yeah.
The jerks eventually get like pushed out, like nobody wants to work with them, nobody wants to hang out with them, nobody wants to talk to them, and they I guess they get the message. You have to be a nice guy, or you have to be, likable, because comics is a collaborative art form. Yeah. There's a few people who can do it all themselves, but most of the time they're collaborating with people. And if you're not the kind of person that people want to hang out with or talk to, then you're gonna have a very long career.
Yeah, I know, me personally, I'm just naturally like a shy guy. I don't know if it's the creative. I live in my head. I'm normally shy until I start talking to someone, whether they start the conversation or I start. Once I get comfortable.
I never pegged you for shy.
What?
I never pegged you for a shy guy.
But I'm a quiet guy by nature. I'm the guy who sits and looks around the room and observes everything, and then realizes, in my head, I'm making fun of everybody, but I'm in my head, but in my head, it's like I'm creating characters based on everything I'm seeing. So that's kind of what I mean by making fun. I'm like, oh my God, that's a perfect character. Look how they're standing. I could draw a funny comic out of that. That's how I look at it. I'm not really making fun of them, just so you know, but it's like, but that's what I mean. It's like, I need time to get, that conversation, that comfortability. So I come across, I know once in a while at some shows, not with fans, but with other creators occasionally, I come across, I guess, a little off-putting, I was told in the beginning. But that's because I'm just quiet, But once you start getting to know people and take Mark, for example. Mark's sitting down with someone. I go to say hi to Mark. Mark introduces me to that person. Now I have someone I can talk to, and I'm not going to be that shy, quiet guy. We're going to have that conversation now. Same thing if you introduce me to someone or I introduced you to someone else. You know what I mean? Like, it opens up the doors, and it's not. I want to pull something from one of my draws. I'm going to be right back. It's not going to take me long. All right.
Sure.
I want to show.
Video.
What?
I love your studio.
Oh, thank you. I'll show you some stuff in a moment if you want.
I have a collection of the Bruce Timm Justice League action figures.
Oh, that's great.
But I've never put them up on display because of my kids, because I know they'll take them.
So
but
I
they're
want
older
to.
now, so in theory I could, because I think they no longer play with toys.
Yeah.
Like that. But I haven't got around to it.
So I want to show you some things that I actually put together. Yeah, well, if you want, I can give you a virtual tour. Just turn my computer around and show you everything. But we're talking about pitching. There's about 15 minutes left, and if we go a little over, that's fine. I don't mind. In the old days, I don't know how many people still do this, but in the old days, we used to create ash cans of comics and show them around. This, you know my character Plunger Pup, right?
Yes.
This was my very first ash can. It was a terrible. I hate the cover. I look inside of it. You know, I think the drawing. You know, I could do a lot better. I was like 18 when I did this. I still wasn't polished. And then I tried. You know, he didn't really go anywhere. I was trying to pitch him around. I ended up revamping him, just doing all on single white paper. Artwork was better for the time. You know, nice black and white. And then this one's something I'm getting ready to do a full piece on. It's Thunder Mark 7. All right, it's a sci-fi story. I'll give you the pitch real quick. Just think, I'm gonna tell you, it's basically Swiss Family Robinson meets Voltron. All right. Those are the two stories I came up with, and I said, what do I like? And it's about it. This is the first issue I've been passing around at shows, so I can talk about this one. The rest of the story I'm not going to talk about. It's basically a planet's being destroyed and everyone's being sent away, and these people are stuck on the planet and they're trying to find a way to escape, and they think they found the shuttle, but it's really this giant robot that they're now living in, and they have to travel to find their people who have left the planet already and get to that civilization where they're supposed to go, but they don't know sentient? What
is the robot sentient?
Not really, no. But I was thinking of adding that, but I haven't. You know, I only wrote it is like the final panel is something like the young son says, Dad, and then it's the planet exploding and the robot flying away, and it says, I don't think
very beginning yet. You don't know yet.
What? Yeah. So it's like I don't think we're on the spaceship. So I'm not going to tell you. I have thoughts about making him sentient in some form, but I haven't decided on that. Well, I won't say I haven't decided. I know what I'm going to do. All right, I just don't want to give it away right now.
That's fine.
But it's a but I see that as a fun series for like an all family friendly, all ages type of thing. So there's been I've sold a few of these at shows and given away a bunch to like other creators and stuff just to get their feedback. And people have given me some good feedback. They like the story. Some people have told me things I can change about the art or what would enhance my scenes. So it's just what you're talking about. But what I wanted to get to was, do you recommend people still doing this?
Oh yeah.
Okay, because I haven't seen many.
I
haven't seen many ash cans at shows lately. That's why I'm asking.
Is it because? I think it's because a lot of people post their stuff online now. I mean, in theory, you don't even have to print it. You can just post it on Instagram or Facebook.
Yeah.
More people will see it on Instagram than they will see it in an ash can that you're trying to pass out at a Comic-Con.
Yeah. No, I know.
So in that sense, I think they're still happening, but they're no. It's just not a photocopied book that you staple together anymore.
Yeah.
It's like something that you post on social media.
Yeah. Because I know, companies like Webtoon are getting really big. I mean, they've been big for a while. But do you think that's a good place to kind of like start a comic and try to get publishers to see it? Or do you think publishers aren't going to sites and looking around at things like that?
Oh, I think publishers are going to sites. I mean, I talked to a few editors, and they still go through those sites.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. They've told me of stories of where they contacted a creator based on what they've seen online.
Okay.
Whether or not it should just be on Webtoon, or it should be on your own social media, or on Facebook, or whatever. I'm not sure what the answer to that question is.
I say try whatever you can.
If you can, try all of them.
Yeah.
You know?
See what works best for you. You know, I know for me, Instagram's better than Facebook.
Yeah.
You know, it's just...
I actually posted, I just did a Batman fanfic. So if you go to my Instagram, you'll see it. It's the last post I did. It's like this. I think it's an eight or nine story Batman story that I've been thinking about for years, and I finally illustrated it and colored and lettered and posted it. So.
And what's your Instagram?
Ramon Gil Art. RAMONGILART.
Okay, I'm going to put that up on the screen for people to follow. So, Ramon Gil.
Or it's not an official DC comic story; it's just a fanfic.
Yeah, no, you got. I mean, and that's important. Like we were talking with Paul earlier, and Paul said he's done. You know, he wrote, if you want to call it fanfic, a Plastic Man like script and story that he would want to do. You know, for DC Comics, and for me, you know, I write a lot for myself. I'm kind of one of those guys that kind of do it all by myself, and not, you know, it's not always like choice. It's just I don't have the money to pay a writer or to pay an artist, so it's like if I want it done, I have to do it. You know. Yeah. But when I need out of my head and out of my characters, and if you want to call it fan fiction, so be it. What I do is I pretend it's like, oh, I love Green Lantern. If I was given Green Lantern, what would I do with it? And I try to take what I've loved about the character and kind of brought my own twist to it. And I'll write a comic script, or I'll write a TV episode, or I'll just kind of in my mood how I want to write, you know? So I do a lot of stuff like that. You know, I've done He-Man, I've done Captain Marvel, the Shazam one. I've done Plastic Man, I've done Dr. Fate. You know, it's just characters that I've loved, and I say, okay, I'm going to write an issue. I'm going to write this. And it's a great way for me to think of the characters, the storytelling that I've enjoyed, and how do I, because every character might have a different storytelling. I write Dr. Fate, and Dr. Fate is now magic and fantasy. And then I go to Green Lantern, and now it's all outer space and sci-fi, you know? So it gives me different genres to play with, all this stuff. So when I work on my stuff, that's kind of how, you know, I pull it. I say, my character, Plunger Pup, for example, he's Luke Skywalker meets Green Lantern, you know? How would these characters combined, and how would I write a story? Because now all of a sudden I got sci-fi, but they're two different writing styles, you know? So, you know, and I kind of look at that, but I've never sent what I've done to publishers. And I don't know if it was fear or just like, oh, this is out of my head now, I'm good. But I want to know, would you recommend maybe people doing stuff like that and coming up with stuff to kind of just help them get in the writing experience? If they don't have a character, if they don't have experience, you know, they don't know what to pitch, just take something of their favorite character to practice with, or
absolutely.
Yeah. All right.
You know, I mean, practice makes perfect.
Yeah.
You know, and if you really want to do this, even if it's just for fun, you know, it doesn't hurt to always practice. And if that means writing stories about properties that somebody else owns, that's fine. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the guys who writes for Transformers, I don't know the name off the top of my head, but for years he would just write stuff and post it online, you know, on some Transformer fanfic website.
Okay.
And the editors over at IDW realized, you know, this guy really knows his characters backwards and forwards. Let's get him to come in and write a couple of issues.
I have a friend, Jeff Chandler. I don't know if he's listening or watching. I know he sometimes watches. He was an official Star Wars artist because he took a drawing of Star Wars that he did and he posted it on a Star Wars website, like a fan website or whatever. And the people at Star Wars saw it, and he received a phone call.
Yeah.
Basically, what happened, he was one of the fastest people to become a Star Wars artist. You know? So anything can happen. It's just, you got to put yourself out there.
You got to put yourself out there, yeah.
You know, we're in an industry that could be very brutal to our egos. Every artist probably or writer thinks they're the most amazing out there. I've always thought, hey, I'm good for what I do. I don't want to be better than this guy or better than this guy or just like them. I want to do what I want to do and be good for me, you know? I
You
mean,
just have to be better than the guy you were yesterday.
that's what I was just about to get to that. That's what you want to do. You
Or
want
last year.
Yeah, always improve, always keep. I draw every day. I have a style. Some days the style's not what I've ever done before, and then the next day I go back to my old style. You know, it's you learn from things that you're seeing, and you take everything in, and you change constantly. And I know we kind of sidetracked off the pitching. Were you? I just want to ask you though, were you done with everything that you said? Do you want to add anything?
Well, no.
Okay.
There's a whole lot more, but I knew that I was going to get through all of them, so that's fine.
All right, so we can definitely do a part.
You can always go to my website and contact me, and I'll send them the pitch packet, or they could join Comic Arts Workshop, and I'm always like posting things there about tips on how to break into the industry. So
Okay, no, I've been on the site before. It's a good site. So and is there a Facebook page for it or anything, or do you?
There is. It's Comic Arts Workshop. It's not I don't post a lot on the Facebook page. I should do more.
Okay.
And I'll probably be doing more as we ramp up the actual story workshop part.
Okay.
But for now, if you do a Google search Comic Arts Workshop, or just go to Ramon Gil, it's all in there.
All right. So excuse me. Sorry. I had one other question. It's just kind of going out of my head right now. Give me a second. But when you're pitching a story, and you're working on this, we're talking about if this gets picked up.
Yeah.
You can put in your pitch, I see this as an ongoing series, or I see this as 13 issues or something like that.
Right.
But you gotta, there's a lot of people out there, and I think a lot of creatives are this way, and I sometimes get this way, I try not to, but I'm filled with ideas. And I know that if I get a comic, let's say Thundermark became a comic, now I got to work on Thundermark. Right. And how do I not sidetrack off Thundermark to do something else? Do you know what I mean? Like, oh my God, I got this other great idea. Now I want to do another pitch, but I'm contracted to do these 13 issues or an ongoing series. How do you keep your love for your topics, your passion for it, that if it does get picked up, you're not like sidetracked in your head and you can constantly write for this story?
That's an interesting question, because if it gets picked up and you sign a contract, that's your word. That's your bond.
Yeah.
So in theory, you have no reason to not fulfill it.
Exactly.
The last thing you want in this industry is a reputation for not following through on your commitments. It's not meeting your deadlines and not finishing your projects.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say it's just force of will. If you think that you get sidetracked by, from paying projects, then you just have to like nut up. You just have to suck it in and get it done.
Yeah.
If you can't, then you don't belong in this industry. I'm sorry to say.
No, I just want to, because I have I've taught a lot of students, and I know I can do it as a professional. I can be like, hey, you know what? I'm going to write this because this is what I want to write or draw or whatever, and I'm excited about it. And there are days where it's like going to work. Oh, I don't want to go to work today, and you don't want to do it, but you got to do it, But I work with a lot of students who have tons and tons of ideas constantly, and they don't know how to focus. That was kind of why I was asking. And I wanted to hear your advice, which was basically my advice. Do it. You're getting paid, whatever works for you. If it means, and I've done this sometimes, I put my wallet right next to me while I work, like I'm paid gigs. So that keeps me away from, it's like, oh, you want to go work on this because that's fun and that's your fun little project that you're doing? And then I turn and I look at my wallet. Well, that's going to be empty if I don't get this done. So that's something that helps me out. Everyone has different methods.
What I notice is if somebody's using that as an excuse not to start a project or not to do something, It's usually that's just the excuse. There's a real reason why they're not doing something. It might be a self-confidence thing. It might be a fear thing.
Yeah.
But usually what I find is when somebody has excuses like that, there's usually a real reason why they're not doing something, or they're not pushing forward.
Yeah.
And the reason that they gave is not the real reason. It's an external reason, but there's probably an internal reason. So, and it's a tough industry, and if you can't meet your deadlines and you can't fulfill your commitments, then just do it for fun.
Yeah.
But it's going to be very tough to be a professional.
Yeah, there's no reason you can't be a hobbyist with this. If you're looking to make it in the industry, you got to develop a hard shell. Somewhere in one of my filing cabinets, I have a folder full of rejection letters from syndication companies to comic companies.
One of those too.
Yeah, and like I remember I met Sergio Aragonés, my all-time favorite artist, at a Comic-Con. He looked at my work, said they were funny, send it to Mad. I sent my work to Mad. I got rejected by Mad. I'm like, Sergio, one of your main artists, told me to send the work. This is back like somewhere between 2003 2005. And I'm like, he told me to send me the work. So I don't know if he was screwing with me, thinking they were. But I'm like, I thought he legitimately enjoyed them. So he said, go send them. I send them. A few months later, sorry, you're not what we're looking for. or whatever it said. Like, you're not ready to be one of our usual gang of idiots, or whatever their form letter said. But I love doing single panel gags. You know how many times I've been rejected by like the New Yorker or something like that? You send the work out, but you just keep doing it. A lot of people are going to say no. It's rare someone says yes right from the start. So just keep plugging away. That's something I like to.
You have to have a real thick skin in this business.
Yeah, thick skin. And that's what goes with pitching, because you might hear no 100 times and then get that one yes from that one maybe small tiny company, or people end up forming their own companies to do it. That's what a lot of people do now. And this is, and I know where we just hit our hour mark, but this is a question that was out of my head, that flew out of my head. Do you feel people still need publishers in this day of digital format of, people can download stuff through Amazon and Drive-Thru and Indie Planet, and they can make their own business by uploading their own stuff or printing them up themselves and trying to sell them at shows? Do people really need a publisher these days?
I've asked that question to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you need a publisher for certain situations.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just want to produce your work, I don't think you do.
Yeah.
I think if you just want to produce comic stories and get people to read them, you don't even need to get them printed. You can just post them online.
Yeah.
If you want something tangible, something physical that you can give out to people or sell to people, you can just. There's a lot of these on-demand printers that will do it for you.
Yeah.
But if you want the kind of worldwide distribution and marketing and promotions that a publisher can give you, a big publisher, then yeah, you would need them. And in theory, if you were publishing yourself, and it's happened to people I know, they've been self-publishing or they just been publishing online, and it gets so popular that a real publisher comes and picks them up.
Yeah, that has. I've seen that.
If you want to put your stories out there, I don't think you need a publisher anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I had friends who were self-publishing in the 90s, and they described it as having having a crack habit, a cocaine habit, because all you were doing is trying to raise money for your next issue.
Yeah.
But nowadays you don't even need to print if you don't want to. Nowadays you can just print 20 copies if you want. Back then I was just on another interview with JD Calderon, JD.
Oh, I know JD. Yeah.
And he was telling me that him and his friends produced a comic back in the 90s, and back then the minimum print run from the printer was 5,000.
Wow, the one I used back in the 90s for the first Plunger Pup was 1,000 I had to pay for. I probably sold 150 in the entire time I was selling Plunger Pup.
Well, I was very impressed. JD said that they sold all of them.
Wow.
Granted, at that quantity, his per unit cost was like 33 cents per unit.
Yeah.
And I think he said he was selling it for like $3 or $2.
Mm-hmm.
So, but he said he sold all of them, and
that's
kudos
great.
to him. You know, it's
Better hustler than I was.
My other stuff that I haven't sold.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, also with print, you need a place to store it.
Yeah.
You know, you know.
If you live in the suburbs and you have a garage, that's fine. I live in the city. I have no place to store it.
Yeah, I'm in Yonkers. I'm in a co-op apartment. You know, it's nice, but I mean, my studio isn't the largest place. If I showed you the floor, like, you know, if I said I'd spin it around, it's only going to be from like table up. You know, you're not going to want to.
I don't even have that.
Yeah, well, when we moved in here, the one thing I told my wife was, I need a studio. I just need my studio. Make me a happy guy. That's all I need. And she said, you know, I kind of convinced. She's like, "Are we going to share it?" I'm like, I guess. And because she was doing crafts at the time, she doesn't really do crafts much anymore.
I went to go visit. I went to go visit Janmark Kisumbing in Arizona a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And I guess space is really cheap out there because he's got a big ass studio.
Oh, I know. I've seen the pictures. He's a good friend of mine. He I haven't had a chance to go out, but I've seen the pictures and stuff. He just did he recorded some video for us of him drawings, like tutorials yesterday that we posted for the Kids Day, and you know, it's fantastic stuff. He's great, and I know he's done some.
He created like 2 of my stories. I love the guy.
Yeah, he's a really good guy. Hard worker, you know, produces as much as he can, which I love. I sometimes
organize Comic Cons out there too.
Yes, he has his own. He does what's the name of, where does he live? Sedona. So it's like
Sedona, yeah.
Yeah, it's a.
I think it's like one of the founding members of the I think it's Northern Arizona Comic Book Association or comic book something.
Yeah, he had a good friend of his on yesterday too, Dave Beatty, who did some work for like DC and he's done some Marvel stuff. He worked on a bunch of stuff and he was showing some of his artwork. If you go back, if you want to check it out, and any fans want to go back and check it out, it's up on this page. It's up on YouTube. Once I attach it to what do we call it? The playlist. You can watch it on GetInTune. Not GetInTune. Sorry, that's my website. IncrediConHV.com. But it'll be on the Increditainment playlist on my page, which is at Michael Gracia on YouTube. So there you can watch it on here again. It was a fun interview. It was a very fun interview. Good guy. Jan was awesome for helping out. But yeah, no, it was a really fun time yesterday. And that's the great thing. Like you said, he worked on some of your stuff. Again, it all comes down to connections. He's someone I'm sure you met through Pronto Comics. Which might be how I met him. I don't remember now. No, I met him at a show. That's how I met him. He sat across from me. And that was the thing. It was a slow time at the show, and we just got up and walked around and looked at each other's artwork, and we just started chatting. We had some downtime, and you know what? It was my first show. I've mentioned this. I'm a 2-time kidney transplant recipient. Yeah, I thought I told you about this. Back in 2011, I had my first transplant when I was 18 back in 1994. It lasted 17 years. I lost it due to scarring on the kidney, not by not treating it well. I got my second transplant in 2011.
How do you treat your kidney badly?
No, you're not doing what you're supposed to. You're eating poorly. You're not eating properly. You're not taking your meds. You don't exercise. Like, I was doing the things I was supposed to be doing, but I developed scarring. So I lost it, and I got a new kidney in 2011. By the way, the first one was from my father. The second one was from my mother. And the medication they gave me after the second transplant, I had a really bad recovery. They gave me I had to have my immune system restarted twice by high dosage of the prednisone, and then it dropped out, and then they drop you so quickly. So I went through steroid withdrawal. I became a steroid-induced diabetic. Eventually, that went away, and I became a full-blown diabetic now. So I'm type 2. But the meds they gave me was on such a high dosage, and through the prednisone, my hand was literally like this. I could not draw for 8 months. Now, I mean, you can see it still shakes a little bit, but it's not bad. I couldn't draw for 8 months. I went through a major depression. It was like my best friend died, you know? And when I started drawing again, I had to redevelop new styles. I couldn't draw like I used to, you know, pre-transplant. So I could still do some of it, like the cutesy stuff, but my superhero characters and things started changing. So that when I did my first con, my artwork I was very nervous about because my first con after the transplant. I was so nervous because my artwork wasn't what I expected it to be or up to the level that I was accustomed to it being before. But I got so many compliments. And Jan was one of those people who gave me the compliments, and that's how like we became friends. And but yeah, everybody around me, like I got a couple of projects that day because of the work I did there. So I mean, like I said, you're gonna grow, you're gonna change. I was kind of forced into it, but you know, have that confidence and don't be afraid. I was scared, but I still went out and did it. You know, and that's I think the important thing. Put it out there, put your work out there. Instagram, Facebook, Webtoon, whatever you think is the property for you. Print it up if you want. But get the work out there. And if you can find a publisher that way, or you create the pitch package that you're talking about, and if you want, I know it comes from your website. I will put your website up on our page. I know it's on here right now. But, you know, if you want me to share a file or something on my IncrediCom page, I'll be happy to do that so people can get it that way too if you want. I mean, sure. Everything's up to you. But I don't want to keep you.
I appreciate this is when we actually formally announced the new actual workshop, story workshop. I'll send you something. If you could post that, that'd be great.
Oh, I'd be happy to. And you're welcome to post as a if you're connected. You're connected on the website, I believe, on the IncrediCon Facebook page. You know, you're welcome to post on there anytime. Comic workshop, anything you're promoting, you know, do it. Get the people who support us to support you. You know, awesome. That's what this is all about, the IncrediChat, the sharing, the creating the relationships. So I don't want to keep you. I know it's after 10 where we live here. And I don't know how you are, but I like to wind down around this time. So I'm going to let you go. If you just want to hang out for just a couple of minutes backstage, I just want to say, you know, just say something.
Backstage?
But well, what I call backstage in my in my service here.
That's fine. That'd be great to catch up.
Yeah. So I want to thank you for joining. This was really educational. I hope everybody who watched enjoyed it. You know, I'm sorry we didn't get questions from the audience, but you gave such great information. I don't think they needed to ask questions. You know, it was really that good. So thank you. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. Tomorrow night, we're going to have fantasy female authors and illustrators on. It's an entire girls panel, or female, women, whatever you want to call them. And we got Lisa Fox, who you might know. She's done some Pronto stuff. We got Kate Seeger, who just wrote a book. They're the authors. We got Daphne Lage, who's drawn like for Dreamweaver Press, like the Oswald Chronicles and stuff like that. And one of our people who come with us on our kids sections that we do at Comic-Cons, and I'm sorry if I screw up her last name. I'm always bad with it. It's Melissa Kalinowski, and she currently is working for Paper Cuts drawing the Loud House comic, but she does a lot of fantasy art on the side. She's like into D&D and stuff like that. So we got 2 fantasy authors, 2 fantasy illustrators, and I'll be asking them questions with possibly a co-host tomorrow. So thank you guys. Have a great night, and I will see you later. All right. Bye.
Bye.